Looks like more people are joining on, so we can go ahead and get started. Thanks for everyone for joining us today. In this webinar, we're going to talk about Event Sponsorships 101, how to grow your event revenue with sponsorships. I'm Jack Meredith, Head of Marketing with TicketBud, and I'm with Ben Schwartz, Grand Poobah of Sales at TicketBud.
How's it going, everyone?
This is brought to you by TicketBud. We're an end-to-end event ticketing and registration solution. And we're really excited about this one, so let's go ahead and jump on in. So, when this webinar is over, we want you guys to do three things. One, have a solid understanding of what's needed to secure sponsorships for your event.
Number two, you want to have a foundation for what we're calling your killer value proposition.
And finally, number three, and this is kind of an action item for you guys, but we want you to give a shot at creating a sponsorship proposal and your pitch email to secure sponsors. We're going to go into all of this and more. We just want to kind of set the stage for what we're about to get into. So to kind of set the tone for this webinar, let's first talk about the sponsorship landscape. So in 2015 alone, over $57 billion were spent on sponsorships. So this includes everything from event sponsorships to just your corporate sponsorships. But regardless, that's a huge number. Wouldn't you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money that you can leverage. Obviously, you're going to want a very smaller percentage of that. But the idea here is that sponsorships are probably more relevant than they've ever been. Brands are trying to interact in ways they've never interacted before. And so that's a lot of money exchanging, you're going from event to sponsor. So
definitely.
It doesn't matter what your size is. You can have a piece of the pie.
Yeah. Dream big, guys. Just in North America alone, $21.4 billion. Just for all our North Americans out there. So continuing on, so what does this all mean, right? So there's more marketing dollars to spend. Bigger budgets, the economy is no longer in a recession, so there's more money that sponsorship managers can attribute towards sponsoring events. Also, with the rise of digital and social media, there's more activation opportunities. So there's more ways for you as the event organizer to integrate your sponsor's brand into your event. So we're going to go into that a little bit here later on, but it allows events to get really creative and really deliver success to their sponsors. And finally, with this, with all the more money to spend, more opportunities, there's also more event sponsors can choose from. So what this means is that it's a little more competitive than it used to be. You're not seeing, just that single festival in your city per year. You're probably seeing maybe 10 to 15 festivals per year. And those 10 to 15 festivals are all vying for the same sponsorship dollars. So it's definitely more competitive, and therefore you guys have to just really execute as best as you can to really get those sponsorship interests and deliver success for them. So let's get to the first step. So before we do anything else in regards to securing sponsors for your event, what we want to do first is identify your killer value proposition. We'll call it KVP for short, just because it's easier to say, obviously. Essentially what a KVP is, it's a description of what your event is and why someone should sponsor it. Seems pretty basic, right? Surprisingly, a lot of people overlook this when they're creating their sponsorship proposals and pitching sponsors. They kind of overlook this completely, and they're really only thinking about sponsorships in terms of how they view it and not as the potential sponsors. So I guess what I mean by that is that when you're creating your sponsorship packets and you're starting to pitch sponsors, you really want to think about what's in it for them, not what's in it for you as the event. You know that. But the sponsor, they don't really care. They want to know what value you can deliver for them at the event, post-event, even before the event. Best practices for your killer value prop, couple paragraphs max. You want it to be short and succinct. You don't want to write a novel here. You want to tie in your event mission and who your audience is. Seems pretty obvious, but a lot of events we see kind of miss this point completely. And then finally, you want to summarize benefits. So this is specific to what your sponsors are trying to achieve. So it could be brand recognition, Maybe you have a giant email list that your attendees are on, and so for the sponsors that could mean lead generation, or just simply media exposure. So you really want to dissect exactly what your sponsors value the most and deliver it with this KVP. So building your KVP. So we're not going to go through all this just because you guys are going to have the slides and you can read it yourselves after the webinar. But essentially what this is doing is kind of setting the tone and allowing you to really dissect what your KVP is going to be, and we break it up into parts. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but you want to really identify what the mission of your event is. What are you trying to achieve to be successful? And then other things like your demographics, audience size, credibility, and finally, and probably I would say maybe the most important thing, the benefits to the sponsors themselves. So you want to answer these terms in 2 to 3 sentences max just to get your points across. And on this next slide, we're actually going to kind of dive through an example of a KVP. So the example that we're using, and we're kind of going to run with this throughout the webinar, is a craft beer conference. So in this example, we dive into each of these terms and give hypothetical answers for what would be an ideal answer that would attract potential sponsors. Mm-hmm. So as you can see, for demographics, we want to get as detailed as possible in terms of understanding who our potential audience is, and we want to kind of try to match that to potential sponsors' audiences.
Sure. I know one thing that we deal with a lot with working with events is this demographic part. It's easy to take your demographics and quickly go from what your demographics are and just transition into why those demographics are so important to a sponsor. And that's a very different point. That's the benefit point, even the credibility point a little bit. It sounds like a simple and harmless mistake to make, but if you're talking about demographics and start weaving in the benefits of those demographics, then your benefit section is going to be a lot shorter, or it's going to be overly redundant. What you want to do is you want to break it out, be very concise with what you say. So be careful when you're listing out your demographics, keep it unbiased, keep it very numbers and stats oriented. Save the why for the benefit, because that's where you make your close, and you want to save that for the end. That's an important thing that I definitely see.
Definitely. So yeah, beyond demographics and benefits, we got audience sizing, pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you know what your expectations are. And then tangible things like sponsorship tiers, list out, what the opportunities are, so that whoever's reading the proposal or whoever you're talking to clearly understands what they're getting themselves into. And then finally, we got credibility, which is super important. You got to show social proof that you're the real deal, that you're the event that they need to dedicate their sponsor dollars to. And this sometimes can be difficult for first-time events. When you're a first-time event, you haven't done it before, expectations are, not sky high just because you might not know if it's going to be a success or not. But regardless, if you don't think it is, you have to at least convey to the sponsors that it's going to be a resounding success. So try to lean on, other things that your planning team might have experience in. So for instance, in this example, the organizers of this craft beer conference happen to be, craft beer enthusiasts themselves. So in the past, they've already worked with pretty large craft beer brands. So that's building credibility, even though it's not directly tied to the event since it's the first year of the event. So trying to pick apart different things that that sponsors are going to, it's going to catch their eyes and it's going to catch their interest and really make an impression on them is huge.
Before we move to benefit, another thing you can do with the credibility thing is obviously this might be jumping ahead a little bit, but as you pull in your sponsors, because inevitably it'll start slow, but once you bring those sponsors in, update your KVP and put those sponsors in the credibility section, because nothing is going to make a sponsor believe that the event is worthwhile like somebody else agreeing to sponsor.
Oh, totally.
It's up to you whether you want to put a competitor. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but you'd be surprised that when somebody sees a sponsor, a competitive or a competitor sponsoring, they want to sponsor too. On the flip side, they might not want to. That's up for you to decide. You need to know the competitors of the people you want to get. But putting other sponsors as a credibility source is going to make it even easier for people. So that's in addition to what Jack was saying. That definitely helps as well.
Sure, definitely. And then finally, we got your benefits. So this is really understanding what benefits your event provides specifically to your sponsors. So you'll want to hit on, why are attendees attending this event? What are they trying to get out of it? And try to message match that to what the sponsors are trying to get out of your event. If you kind of reach that point, then it's going to be really easy for the sponsors to see, oh, you know what, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to open up my checkbook and write a check.
And sometimes it can be beneficial to have multiple KVPs. This is not to say that you need to have one that applies to everybody. A good example would be, a food and wine event, for example. The KVP that you're going to give to people that are in the food industry is probably different than the one that you're going to give to those in the beverage and alcohol industry. And then from there, you can start to see, okay, well, that's going to be different than what we do to, the people that are probably pushing cookingware or something like that. So that you can have a framework in place, but don't be afraid to have a benefit that's very specifically addressed to a small segment of the sponsors you want, because the more applicable it is and the more it really appeals to them, the more likely they are to drop some money. So, don't be afraid to have multiple KVPs that are targeted at very specific segments of sponsors.
Sure. Makes sense. Awesome. So let's fast forward a little bit. We've built our KVP, kind of had the foundation for what our event's all about and how it's going to appeal to sponsors. So the next step is to find sponsorship targets. So we're going to go over some tactics and just best practices that we've found. What I think that any event should start with when they're looking for targets is start with your existing network. More than likely, whatever type of event you're throwing, you have some type of background with the industry or topic that your event is covering. So you probably have connections that would be relevant to sponsoring this event. Now, it might not be people that are willing to sponsor directly, but they might know people in their network that they could give you what we call a warm introduction to. This is great in an easiest way because you obviously know these people, so there's going to be an element of trust there that's not going to be there when you're cold emailing or calling these potential targets. Second point is, while you're contacting your existing network, you're also going to want to find cold targets as well, and you're going to want to take all those targets and throw them in a spreadsheet for tracking purposes. And we're going to get to this in the next slide. Makes it easy to just really kind of go over everything. Finally, I kind of mentioned this earlier, you want to lean on your KVP. This is just going to help you maintain your focus and consistency when you're looking for targets and pitching sponsors. So next slide is a spreadsheet example. In the PDF that we gave you guys, you can actually click on the link here and copy the spreadsheet. It's in Google Sheets. Pretty basic, just all the important information that you need to have on all your targets. So this includes, contact information, when you contacted them, what the status of the opportunity is, just so anyone on your team can go into the spreadsheet and see from a bird's eye view what the progress is, or do we need to really get on the sponsorship wagon and start pitching more people, or okay, we've got all our spots are filled, let's close off sponsors and make sure that we don't sell anymore, which would be a great situation.
Yeah. I like the color coding too. I know that's not integral to the spreadsheet, but I'm not going to lie. Anytime we've had to do sponsorships or we've had to do anything, it's easier obviously when you look at it, especially when you share it. But it's fun to turn something from a no to a yes and see all the green on your sponsorship. So that sounds kind of corny, but you can definitely break it up and use color coding to help spread that out. I know that's something that I like to do.
I like to do it as well. That's the visual cue there, I guess. Right. That's in effect. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and take this one. So once you're moving forward a little bit, you need to have some questions that are really going to help you determine who you go after. And so there's a lot of questions that are involved, but there's three big ones that we're going to posit to you. Who is sponsoring your competitors' events? What products or services does your attendee use? And who is the point of contact? So obviously, looking at your competitors' events and seeing who is actively sponsoring that is going to be a great way to see who's likely to come sponsor yours. That's pretty straightforward. So what you need to do is be familiar with your competition. What events are going around town that are probably going to be competing with yours. On a side note, it's at a very fundamental basis, it's good to know when those events are so you don't schedule yours at the same time. But that's not necessarily a sponsorship. That's just a side note. But look at your competitors' events. Look at who's involved with them. See what kind of sponsorship offering they are offering. It's going to be hard to get an exact idea, but look at the event, look at the marketing material that they provide, and see what they're doing. That way you can do it better. And when you talk to them, you can tell them how you're going to one up the competition. The second one, though, is probably it's my favorite, and it's probably the most useful because it involves the creativity side of things. Looking at your competitors means just going and seeing who's already there. The second part is maybe finding opportunity that's not immediately visible. So what you want to do is you want to look at who your attendees are. Who is your ideal attendee? Give them a fake name. Think about their personality. What do they do on the weekends? What do they like to do? And from there, you'd be surprised when you start to really get into that level of depth. You'll start to think about what kind of things do they do? What kind of products do they use? What kind of services are they actively on? And then from there, they're your sponsors. So for a craft beer, the conference we're talking about, if we think about somebody that does craft beer and what the demographics are, we can probably make the safe assumption that they're actively into sports. Drinking and sports go hand in hand. So maybe you want to partner with a local sports store. Maybe you want to talk about fantasy sports and an online type of sponsorship. You can see, though, how the snowball gets rolling the more you start to identify who your person is and what they like.
Sure.
And then lastly, point of contact. So once you actually reach out, and this is something that I know Jack and I have both dealt with a ton of times, getting to the person that actually makes the decision. If you have 5 weeks worth of conversations with this person and then ultimately they tell you they need to push it up the chain of command, you kind of wasted 5 weeks talking to somebody that doesn't have decision power. That's a big waste of your time. So what you want to be sure to do is identify who's in charge of deciding that the sponsorship is going to be a go or no go. And you can quickly figure that out by just asking, who do I need to get in contact with to get this approved? Who is the person in charge of this total sponsorship? Typically that's somebody that has the word marketing or the word sponsorship in their job title. But you'd be surprised the amount of people that just assume the person they're talking to is the decision maker. Mm-hmm. Chances are it's not. So you want to ask, you want to figure out who it is, and you want to get that person in on the conversation as early as possible.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Good points there.
Yep. And then moving down, and I know I'll have Jack chime in with a couple of these tools that he's used a little bit more than I have, but prospecting sponsors is going to be something that's going to be really important. How do you find these people? And so we've listed out a few of the tools that you can utilize, and we use all of these actually. So I can definitely, Jack and I can both back these guys up. LinkedIn, pretty simple and straightforward, but the big advantage of LinkedIn is that you can search for people by just their job title. You don't need to go and look for somebody's name. You can just search them by their title and just get a huge list of people that meet that description and then filter from there. Email Hunter, I'll let Jack go more into that in a second, but Reportive is definitely something that I use big time. It's basically an extension for your email client, I believe Gmail specifically. Mm-hmm. Basically what it does is when you enter an email, it pulls all the information that it can find about this person, including their social media profile, Google Plus, Facebook, things like that. And it allows you to, and usually it pulls a picture as well, and it just allows you to get an idea of who this person is. And if you enter the right email, it lets you know that you have the right email. So Reportive is definitely an awesome tool. Check all these out. I know, Jack, you can speak more to Email Hunter because I know that's a pretty powerful one too.
Sure, yeah. And Reportive, it's funny. I mean, what you're doing is you're kind of building a rapport with these prospects, right? And Reportive gives you kind of that snapshot of all their information to where you can, see what previous jobs that they've had on LinkedIn or what their interests are.
Right.
You can potentially say that it's a little creepy, but it's all public information anyways. And you're just trying to, really find some connections to build upon and really close that deal. Yeah. Email Hunter is great. It's a nice little tool that I found. So when you're trying to find individual people's emails, so let's say you're on LinkedIn, you find the sponsorship manager for some craft brewery, but you cannot find his email on the website, type in the domain address of that company, and it's going to pull all the emails from that domain. So hopefully with that, you can find the specific person's email, just because the rule of thumb here is that you always want to try to email a specific person instead of just like a general email, just because when you email a specific person, it's going to feel more personalized. You're going to get right to the person you want to talk to. And a lot of those website general emails, like, info at or something like that, usually no one really checks them. And so no one's going to answer you. So just have a better success rate on that. Finally, if you're wanting to go really crazy with cold emailing, which we're about to get here in a second, Tout app is a really good tool for kind of automating your cold emailing. It allows you to create templates on the fly, and you can pretty much replace different words within a template to personalize it in an automated fashion. It also allows you to do bulk emails as well. So let's say you have a list of 100 sponsorship targets, and you have decided on a very specific cold email that you know is going to blow them away. You can just pretty much upload all the emails into a list, press a button, and it's going to all send them the same personalized template. So it actually looks like you wrote it every time. It's a nice trick, but it does work. It's going to save you a lot of time in the long run when you're trying to set up conversations and close those sponsorship deals. So those are some tools, and feel free to shoot us an email after this webinar if you want any additional information. The tools are hyperlinked to their website, so you'll find out more information there as well. So before we contact your targets, we got to talk about proposals, Ben.
Let's talk about them. Oh.
And no, not the rom-com proposal, not the movie. Have you seen this movie?
No, but this pun is terrible.
I know, it's really bad, but I wanted to lighten the mood a little bit. Okay. Anyways, joke failed. We're not talking about the movie. We're talking about your sponsorship proposal, and not just a sponsorship proposal, a mind-blowing sponsorship proposal.
What else? What else kind of proposal is there?
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you, actually. I do know. Okay. There's a lot of crappy proposals out there.
It's true. We've seen a few.
Yeah. We get sponsorship proposals all the time sent to us from various different companies, and probably 99% of them don't really take the time to, specify what the sponsorship is about, how their killer value proposition applies to us, and they just do a pretty bad job at just creating the proposal itself. It doesn't look professional at all. It's low quality. So we want to kind of harp on this a little bit because it's super important. First tip is to be clear, concise, and to the point. Think of how a sponsorship manager is reading these proposals. They're probably looking at a bunch of different events that they're looking at sponsoring. So they want to, page through these proposals, really get to what is this event about, what's the value that's going to deliver to me, and then move on to the next proposal. So the quicker you can get to the point, the better. People don't like a ton of words and a ton of terms and conditions and just boring language. You just want to be clear, concise, to the point.
There's one, so I can't speak for all companies, but I know when we evaluate sponsorships, and there's some times of the year where there's a season where you'll be busy and get a few more sponsorship proposals than normal. One thing that I'll do is, I'll quickly gloss over it and I'll put it in a to read later or never going to read this again kind of pile. And so the idea here, and as I think we're going to show you on the next slide, you need to be able to attract attention immediately. Your proposal needs to have it needs to reflect your event, right? I mean, if I look at your page and I don't think the event is going to be fun or relevant, chances are I'm not going to sponsor it. So, on the next page, I think we're going to show you a good example and explain why.
Definitely. So yeah, if you want to read more, we wrote a guest post recently that dives deeper into it. I know that some of you guys, I think, came from the guest post to the webinar, so that's awesome. But yeah, it goes in a deep dive in 7 tips that you'll want to take to create a mind-blowing proposal.
Yeah. Shout out to Texie Talk.
Yep. So here's an example of one that we liked in particular. And what we liked about it is that it's very visual oriented, used really solid statistics that would speak out to me if I was interested in sponsoring this type of event. And as you can see, it's not just a wall of text that you have to read through. Very easy on the eyes to kind of scan through, really check off the boxes. Okay, that fits my demographic. Oh, they have 250 attendees. Perfect. 96% women. Perfect. Check, check, check. Easy, straightforward. Someone can read this in 5 minutes, get exactly what they're all about, and make that decision if they're going to sponsor the event.
Mm-hmm. Definitely don't, not to cut you off, but don't skip on design. That's not to say that you should be spending a lot of your marketing dollars on it. But I mean, do not forget about design, because you'd be surprised the amount of sponsorship proposals that are just, either they're just very basic Word documents, or they're, as Jack likes to say, they've got 15-point Comic Sans font and clip art. I mean, and that's not to say that these events aren't worthy. I think that's part of what's such a crime, is that a lot of these events represent a very strong value prop, but they don't accurately communicate it. And, that's kind of a shame. And so one way to nix that entirely is to make sure that your proposal gets to the point and does so in a way that people are going to be, quickly attracted to, which I think in this case, this particular proposal did a good job of that.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, you don't need to hire like a full-time designer to make a proposal look pretty. There's a lot of online solutions out there that you can use that are very affordable. Two that I know off the top of my head, Design Crowd and 99 Designs. Google those two. Check them out. From my understanding, they're pretty affordable, and you're going to get quality work in return. So kind of branching off of the proposal, let's talk a little bit about pricing sponsorship tiers, Ben, because I know this is a big one for a lot of people, especially for new events, because it's hard to really figure this out.
Yeah. So when we've worked with events before and helped them with their ticketing, a question that I get a lot, particularly with nonprofits and charities, with events in general, is the tiers and what they should price them at and how many they should have. And this tends to be one of the biggest roadblocks for a lot of events. And so really there's three main things that I would say you need to look at. And there's a lot more of things that go into it. But the first is that you should base your pricing levels off of the perceived value and not the actual cost associated with the sponsorship. And so what I mean by that is that don't take the things that are included in the sponsorship and just say this costs $5 to do, so it's going to be $5 added to the sponsorship cost. That would be silly to do. What you need to do is, once you've identified your benefits and seen what it's going to cost for those benefits to be included, think about what the value is to the sponsor. What is the perceived value? So that's, it's different for every event, but basically what you need to determine is, and to really get a great sponsorship level or a great tier, is to get something that's low cost and a very high value. So for example, I use TicketBud as an example, but we have spots on our software where you can put customized messaging directly in the email that includes the attendees' tickets, or you can include logos and sponsorships on the thank you page. That costs nothing to do. I mean, it's included in our software, but the value to that is one-to-one interaction. On the thank you page, it's interaction after somebody's bought a ticket, so it's direct purchase power, and then it's on the actual email. And sponsors are dying to get into somebody's inbox without getting sent to spam or without getting deleted. So that's a perfect example of low cost, high perceived value. Mm-hmm. You'd be surprised the amount of people that say, oh, that was so easy to do, I'm just going to throw that into my sponsorship. No, a million times no. Because what you've just done, if you do that, is take something that has a really high perceived value to a sponsor and basically made the dollar amount zero. So make sure that when you're looking at it, what is the benefit? What's the perceived value? And that's something that you guys know better than you for your specific event. I focus mainly on that point because it's the biggest of the three, but definitely do not forget about number two, which is that you want to have more small level pricing tiers than big ones. In fact, most events that we see have 1 to 2 big high dollar amount levels and then a few sponsors within that. What you want to do is have a plethora of smaller price levels, because depending on the size of your event, but typically with smaller events, price sensitivity is a big deal. So having $100 and $200 pricing level, that's going to be a deciding factor versus between $10,000 and $15,000. For those big sponsors, that's not as big of a deal. So what you really want to do is have a lot of smaller tiers and a few big ones, and make sure that those smaller tiers, there's a lot of different varied benefits from each one, because you open up the amount of opportunity you have for some of the smaller sponsors that you have.
Definitely.
Yep. And then lastly, itemize out your tiers. People are going to ask you, why is this sponsorship X amount of dollars? What exactly do I get? And so if you can't explain it, you can't describe it, and you can't, show why that benefit is that amount of dollars, it's plain and simple, no one's going to sponsor your event. You'd be surprised when sponsors come to us and we do ask for more information and they can't provide it, or they give us data that's not verifiable or they give us wishy-washy numbers that they can't back up, that's an immediate red flag that they don't know what their value is. And chances are they don't know who their attendees are. And that's not an event that we want to be associated with. So make sure that you know exactly what a tier includes, why that's included, and what the dollar amount is. So sponsorship tiers are important. That's why I kind of rambled a little bit about it, but it's important for you to know exactly what you're providing and why you're providing it at the cost you're going to be asking for.
Sure. Yeah, it's super important because you don't want to totally screw the pooch on the pricing, and you realize that whatever it is completely out of the budget of all the sponsorships you're targeting.
Yeah.
So have at least one tier that's pretty small, entry level. So especially new sponsors can get their feet wet, secure that small sponsorship, and then work up to the larger ones in future years once that you guys have kind of gotten them, you've gained their trust pretty much. You've gained their trust over time by having them work up the sponsorships and delivering value over time. It's just going to be a lot easier in the long run.
And as we move on, and you can stay on this, but something to consider if this is your first event, look at the competition, see what their pricing tiers are. That data shouldn't be hard to find, and either match the price or maybe undercut it a little bit. If you've never done it before, that's a good way to get a starting number.
Sure. Awesome. So far you got your killer value prop, you found your targets, you just created your proposal. So now it's time to pitch. What we're going to talk about specifically is cold email pitching, because we really like this topic and it's pretty fun to do. Cold emailing is awesome because, one, it's less obtrusive than cold calling. You're not completely interrupting someone's day by shooting them an email. Obviously, when someone receives an email, they're not going to immediately respond. They can wait a couple of days to respond. It's as they see fit. So that's a good reason why it's awesome. Another reason is that you can create a formula that you can reuse. So this is like a cold email template where you can just kind of piece together the different personalized information, but you still have like the same general text in that email. Mm-hmm. So it makes it a lot quicker to kind of shoot off emails and pitches to these different sponsors. And then finally, it requires your recipients to exert less energy in responding. Mm-hmm. If someone's calling you and you have to hop on a call initially, and you're going to be kind of frazzled because you don't know what the call is about, and it's just not the ideal experience when initially making that first cold touch. Like I said, emailing, it's really kind of back and forth. You can do it, as you go. With this being said, cold emailing is terrible in a lot of ways if you don't do it correctly. So some things that we always see is making the cold email all about you. So this is not really thinking how the sponsor or whoever is on the receiving end is going to view your email, and just kind of blindly writing the email from the perspective of how you would like to be pitched. And that can mess up the messaging a lot, and it's going to turn off a lot of people. And it's going to be a very obvious tell that your email is a sales email. Another couple things is not taking the time to personalize the message. If you just say, hey, person, my name is Jack from TicketBud, and I would like you to sponsor my event, it's just going to sound robotic and not real, and it's bad.
This is a big one. So coming from a sales perspective, obviously that's one of my big roles at TicketBud. So from a personalization standpoint, any little thing that you can include in the email that personalizes it, it doesn't matter if you talk about the weather in the city that they live, or you happen to find out that they like a certain sports team. It sounds corny, but think about an email that you've ever gotten. If it was bland and generic and you knew it, it didn't, you immediately tossed it. If something about it was relevant and related to you, you read the whole thing. Chances are you at least read part of it. So try to find what I'll go ahead and call a hook. Basically put something in there that they'll read and say, okay, maybe this is a generic email, but they took the time to know I live in Phoenix, or they took the time to know that, I'm a big fan of the Cardinals. Sounds silly, but find a hook, and I guarantee you your open and click-through rates and response rates will skyrocket.
Sure. So quickly, here's an example that we kind of constructed for you guys. And this isn't like the end-all, be-all best example. Obviously, what you want to do is you want to test different approaches, but this is a great foundation to start with. What we like to do with our cold emails and what we would like to see when we're getting pitched from sponsors is we want the email first to be short and sweet, not a laundry list of stuff that they're going to provide to us. Because, whenever you open an email and you see just a wall of text, I at least get the feeling of like, oh, I have to read all this.
I just delete it typically.
Ben just deletes it.
I delete
so don't send Ben a long email.
Yeah, don't, please.
So make it short and sweet, and then use a conversational tone. Send the email like you're talking to your friend. Don't, put on your sales hat and go all sales robot on them, because people are gonna get turned off by that. Like Ben said, personalization is key. Find that hook. What's gonna really get that person to be interested in that first few sentences, because that's gonna hook them in to read the rest of the email.
Yep.
Finally, clear call to action. At the end of the email, make it as obvious as possible what you would like that person to do in response. So in this example, for instance, the call to action is, did you have time Thursday afternoon for a 10-minute call? Very straightforward, pushes the initiative. There's no, abstractness to it.
Yeah, straightforward.
Very clear. So moving on, did you have anything to add here, Ben?
No, I know I definitely do on the next slide. But this, just to reiterate, this is an example. You guys don't copy and paste this. You can if you wanted and put in your own personalized message. But the idea here is that you took the time, especially for big sponsors. You don't want to send them a very generic email. So write your own and use this more as a template than as just a copy and paste, basically.
Definitely. So this is a good one too. After you send the cold email, your job isn't done, because you're going to get a lot of people that don't respond, or maybe they respond with one of these objections that we're going to go over. So constructing the first cold email is just half of the equation, right? You got to follow up and close those deals. So Ben, do you want to take this one away? Because I know you like talking about it.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's not even half the deal. It can be a fraction of the deal, because you could be sending 5, 10, 15 emails. And I know it sounds kind of crazy to send a follow-up until you get a response. I have, and I know other sales, directors and sales managers that have had the same thing happen. I've emailed somebody 20 times, and on the 21st time, they emailed me back. And they didn't email me back to say, go away. They said, I'm sorry, for some reason you were going into the wrong folder, or I just have been busy for the past couple months, or I've been on vacation. Let's hear about your product. It sounds crazy, but don't stop until you get a yes or a no. And sometimes when you get a no, that is still an indication that there's some interest. Because if they're taking the time to respond to you, that means something. So, respond, keep going back and forth, sending a template, maybe vary the template slightly so it looks like you're trying to write a different message. But the idea here is that don't stop until you get a firm yes or a firm no. A maybe, like you said, maybes can kill your performance. You wanna get that hard yes or no, and that way you know for sure.
Yeah. To add to that real quick, from my perspective, I guess, because I do marketing at TicketBud, there's a lot of different companies that will pitch us on their products. And me being as busy as I am, I don't always have time to, answer their email right away. And so I'll tend to maybe wait 1, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks before I get back to responding, especially even if I'm interested in it. It still takes me a while just because of a lot of other stuff going on. So keep that in mind when you're pitching these sponsors, is that these people that are involved in marketing and, choosing sponsorships, they got a lot on their plate. So let them, respond at their own accord, and make sure that whenever they do respond, you're right there as quickly as possible to deliver on your value.
And just for a frame of reference, when I say follow up until you get a yes or no, don't email them every day, because that's an awful idea. What I do is I do once a week. Typically, it'll be every Monday, where I say, how was your weekend? Chances are on Monday, they're going through their inbox. You can do whatever interval you like, but that's what I do. And then the next step is that, let's say you get that no, and they have an objection for you, which is basically a reason why they shouldn't sponsor the event. You need to be proactive and know what those are going to be before they even ask them. And so 4 big ones are, I've never heard of the event. Why should I sponsor it? You guys are brand new. I don't know if your audience is relevant to me and it's worth my money. These tiers are too expensive. And then, let me take a look at this and I'll get back to you. Send me over some document and maybe I'll reach back out to you. I'm not going to go over a response to each one of these. We don't have time for that, because it can get very in depth in terms of what you say, but you should be able to come up with a response. For first events, a lot of times you'll just, taking a leap of faith is not a good response. I've never heard of your event. Why should I sponsor it? Well, it's going to be a great event is not a good answer. You need to be able to back it up with that KPV that we were talking about. And that it all funnels back to that, or KVP, excuse me. So, I mean, the big thing here is that just know what people are going to ask before they ask it, because I guarantee you people are going to be wanting to know what the value is. And another nice thing about an email is that if you don't know it, they can ask and you can have time to respond. So that's kind of why cold emailing can be a little better than a cold call. But even so, have this ready for a call as well so that you can be ready to hit back at them.
Definitely. Very quickly, that last bullet point, I'll review this with our marketing team and get back to you. Can you send over the proposal in the meantime? As much as you can, don't send over the proposal until you've talked to them. Because what usually happens is you'll send over the proposal and then they'll send you an email back saying, hey, thanks for the proposal. We'll get back to you after we review it. And then they never get back to you. So try to fight that objection by saying, hey, you know what? This proposal is just a really broad summary of everything. I'd love to really dig down into what your particular needs are from a sponsorship level. And then I can send over the proposal. Because you want to get them on the phone, talk them up, chat them up, show them why your event is awesome, and really use the proposal as like a supplement to your pitch. Okay, so very quickly, this last part here, setting up your sponsors up for success. So you got your sponsors, you've secured them. Now, how do you deliver value to them? First, we can kind of run through these briefly. You have a laundry list of options, right? So social media considerations. This is, fairly new sponsorship activation tactic. Really, what it boils down to is if you have social media accounts that have a large following, it makes perfect sense to really leverage that and either do something like a dedicated post that mentions the sponsor, or even like a social media account takeover. Like I've seen recently, like Instagram accounts will let a business take over their account and it'll be all about their specific business. And it's a great way to kind of integrate the brand into the event. Additionally, there's a lot of this stuff you guys would probably already know about, but we just wanted to mention it. Swag bags, easy, cheap, good visibility for the sponsors. You got branding considerations, very obvious to you guys probably. Additionally, booth space if you're a conference, super important for business companies that are trying to really engage with your audience there. And then finally, complimentary tickets and creative activations. One thing about branding considerations, going back to the sponsorship proposal. So let's say, for instance, you guys are, one of your sponsorship opportunities is a branded car that you have at let's say you're organizing a golf tournament. You have a car that it's going to be wrapped in a sponsor branding. To really help your sponsors visualize it, go ahead and get your design team to kind of mock up a car with that specific sponsor's branding on it, and then send that in the proposal. So that way your sponsorship manager can kind of visualize how awesome that's going to look. That's going to go a long way if you kind of take that extra step.
Showing it's going to be way more impactful than telling it. As we move to the later slides, one thing to mention, you can even go to the next slide just to have the graphics up, but don't be afraid to talk to your sponsors. I won't go too much in detail on this because I know we're going to wrap things up, but sponsors have their own needs and goals. Sometimes they have a new product coming out, or they have a new feature that they want to promote. Talk to them about it and see if they can't integrate that into your event, because I guarantee that post-event, which we're about to get into as on the last slide, they're going to remember the event that was flexible with them, that wanted to know what their goals and their needs were. I can think of events that have asked us, what are you doing? What's happening in TicketBud right now, and how can we help you with that? Those are the sponsors. Those are the events we love to work with, people that actively want to be involved with us and help us promote our brand. So don't be afraid to talk. Don't be afraid to say, this is what we offer. What are you interested in providing as well?
Definitely. And that's a good segue into sponsorship activations, which is essentially kind of really understanding the brand and what they're doing and integrating that in more of a native way into your event. So it's one thing to say, like, this event was sponsored by Budweiser. It's another thing if you have Budweiser set up, a cooler or a keg, or like in this picture, this is what Samuel Adams has here. It's called a jockey box. It's just a lot more native than just plastering their logo on the program for the event. It's going to go I feel like it's just going to go a lot farther in kind of cementing into your audience's minds, like who's the leader in the beer market or whatever, what have you.
Yeah. Also, should go without saying, but it is worth mentioning. If somebody is sponsoring your event and you are using a product like what they sponsor, you should probably use that product.
Yes.
Just a little side note.
Yeah, you don't want to get in a sticky situation where you're using a competitor's product that you're. Yeah, it's going to be bad.
That has happened and it has been disastrous. So just don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah, and then so I'll quickly go over. So we could do an entire other webinar dedicated to what you do after the event, but really you can boil it down, I think, into four main points. So after the event, the first thing you want to do is give your sponsors a personal thanks. It sounds corny, but a handwritten card is personal. It means you took the time to do more than just type on a laptop. A handwritten card is honestly a really great way to say thank you. And I know that it might sound a little old-fashioned, but you know what, it is. And I think that's why it sticks out. I know we have postcards on our fridge at the office from people that have written to us. So, and we see them every day. So that's a way for them to remember you and for you to remember them. And then, of course, do a dedicated blast. A lot of times an event ends and you just sit down and just take a deep breath and say, thank God it's over. But unfortunately, as event organizers know, it's never really over. It's always going on. And so you want to send a dedicated thank you blast, promoting your sponsors to everybody that came to the event. Mm-hmm. From there, you want to stay in touch with them. So you want to let them know, here are the final numbers on the event. Here are some metrics that are particularly relevant to what your business does. And even, if you wanted to surprise them with, here's a list of contacts we have, stuff like that. Just make sure you're talking to them. Event metrics are a really great way to stay in touch with them. But make sure you point out what it means to their sponsor. So if you say, this year was really, 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 really popular. We had more, women attend this event than ever. Explain why that's important. Explain why having, the higher share of your attendees were female, why that's a benefit to their brand and how next year you expect even more. And that's something that they can leverage. From there, promote them via social media. Social media is something you should be doing all the time, most likely. Hopefully you are. And so sponsors love to feel like they got more than they paid for. So if you're promoting them throughout the year, way after the event's over, they're going to love that. It's free publicity for them. And it's, of course, totally free for you because it's your social media account. So give them some free love and they won't forget it. And then lastly, as your next event rolls around, assuming the sponsor was a good sponsor, offer them priority access. You always want to be increasing the value of your sponsorship, but I can't overstate how important it is to have a sponsor that you trust and have a sponsor that has a relationship. I'm sure in your local area, there's events that have been sponsored by a local sandwich shop or a local bike shop for 20-something years, to the point where the two are almost the same event. You can't say one without saying the other. That's huge to have that kind of loyalty from a sponsor, because it's much easier to have one that keeps coming back every year than having to find new ones. And then, of course, the longer you're in a sponsorship relationship together, the more you're going to be willing to have some give and take in terms of what works and what doesn't work. So take the sponsors you like and try to keep them. Offer them priority access. Offer them more than you're offering new sponsors.
Over-deliver.
Yeah, definitely over-deliver.
Okay, so where to go from here? First, an inspirational quote to send you guys off.
Gotta love it.
Be creative, listen to what sponsors are asking for, and most importantly, make sure you can deliver everything that you promise. And I'd like to even tweak this a little bit and say, make sure you can over-deliver on everything that you promise, because people love that. People love knowing that they're being taken care of, that they're getting value.
For free. That's the feeling they get.
Yeah, definitely. So cool. In summary, here's some things that we'd love for you guys to do. And if you do these and have any feedback, send us an email. We'd love to hear it. First, find your KVP. What's your killer value prop? This is what you're going to build everything from. From that, you'll be able to create a proposal and cold email pitch. Even if you don't have an event coming up, just kind of play around with it. Get creative. See what you can come up with that you can utilize potentially for future events. And then finally, set your sponsors up for success. Like Ben said, it's a ongoing process. Don't forget about your sponsors just because your event ends. Continue to over-deliver and show them how awesome your event is and why they're sponsoring it. So those are our three kind of takeaways that we hope that you guys can integrate into your future events. So yeah, that's it. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for joining, guys. As always, we'll probably have a new webinar here in the next couple weeks. Any feedback, comments, please shoot us an email, Ben@Ticketbud, Jack@Ticketbud. We'd love to talk to you, hear what you're doing in the event planning space and how we can help. Thanks.